not mailing in that, oh, we got them now because the best players out. But it's watching very long to be like,
Hey, they're best players not in. And plus you can't watch.
no, that's right.
Are you streaming?
Yeah. Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we can, I think we will go ahead and call the school calendar public hearing to order.
Okay.
Carol, is there a roll call?
Yeah, Tyler,
Here.
Jeff,
Yep.
John,
Here.
Deb,
Here.
Here.
all present.
Okay. And is there anybody here that would like to speak to the school calendar? The changes made to the school calendar?
I would.
Sure.
Curtis Martink, many of you know me, about several of your kids, actually all your kids.
Do we apologize now?
I guess just talking with some other staff members, a couple of concerns we have is just the increase in the number of 12:30 out days, that taking away from instructional time with the increased 12:30 out days. And then also the removal of the flex days. I think a lot of staff saw that as a good time to get ready for the school year. A couple days we could use as we saw fit to make sure we're ready either for the beginning of the year, or some people have more stuff to put away at the end of the year could have used one at the end, and obviously this calendar gets rid of those. Puts the 2 flex days at the beginning of the years as PD days, and then increases the number of 12:30 out days, which causes more disruptions to student day schedules than what is currently seen with the calendar.
Are you, I have a couple of questions. Are you speaking just for the high school, or are you speaking for the whole all the grades?
The people, obviously being at the high school, I've talked to the high school.
Okay.
Okay. I know Mr. Vanderpool sent out an email asked for some feedback. I believe some people responded to him about it directly. My guess though, I mean, if you ask a teacher, would you like 2 days to get ready for the school year or 2 more days of meetings? I'm going to guess that's across the district, that they would like the 2 days to get ready for the school year, those flex days.
So it was a trade. There were the 2 flex days, and now they've turned into early outs.
No.
Is the, essentially, no?
No. The flex days are, the flex days are now 20 and 21.
Mhm.
So they are no longer flex days, and if they're on there as PD days, I'm assuming that will likely have meetings and planned activities
Gotcha.
for that time versus having the freedom.
Gotcha.
The 12:30 out days went from 13 12:30 out days on Wednesdays to 16. And I believe a big reason for that was to have regularity, so it's easier to communicate the 2nd of the month and the 4th of the month. But you could also accomplish regularity by doing 1 day of a month as well, 12:30 out a month, and 1st or 3rd or whatever it is. That would also get the regularity for ease of communication with parents.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay. Now, I know that we'll be talking about that in more detail when that item comes up on the agenda. But this is just an opportunity for us to hear. So I think if there's nobody else,
You want to close that?
is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that right? Okay. This public hearing for the school calendar is closed.
6:04.
6:04. Okay. So we have a second public hearing here for the lease of real property for the 911 tower. We have a roll call in case anybody's left.
Okay, Tyler?
Here.
Jeff?
Yep.
John?
Here.
Deb?
Here.
Andrew?
Here.
Okay. And is there anybody here that would like to speak on behalf or give their thoughts on the 911 tower? Yes. Oh. No? Yes?
No, I'm just looking for a custodian, and that's down in the gym.
I'll go down there.
I can do it.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're okay. You're okay.
I do the same thing.
No problem. I was like, oh, he's going to stand up. Good job.
As you can see that we have all the documents we need
Yeah.
tonight, so we were able to accomplish that in a short amount of time. So.
Good job. So we have what we need. And again, that will be on the agenda in just a short period of time, and we can have that vote. So if there's nobody from the public that wants to speak, is there a motion? Do you guys want to wait a little bit longer, or is there a motion to
Motion.
adjourn? Okay. All those in favor? I think it's Tyler.
Tyler, okay, I didn't hear that. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that public hearing is adjourned. Okay.
Moving through the public hearing.
I've never gotten through the first part of the agenda very fast, so. Okay, now, this would call together our regular meeting. Is there, would you like to do a third roll call?
We'll just make sure
Yep.
everybody's still here. Tyler,
Yep.
Jeff,
Yep.
John, Deb, and Andrew.
Here.
I didn't
Still
say
all
here.
present.
I was just saying if anybody. Okay. So the first, we have approval of the agenda, first of all.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the agenda is approved. We have a third public forum. Is this an opportunity for anybody to talk about whatever it is? Any other topics, maybe? No? Okay, we will move on to oral reports. So the first,
Carrie, sorry.
Carrie stepped out. Okay, well, we can maybe swap an order or so of the reports. So we will wait for Carrie to come back for the SIAC topic. How about any, Vic, are there any announcements or celebrations?
If not, you're gonna have to make up something.
Sorry, I waited, I was polite and waited until you had them in your mouth before I said that.
As a meeting announcement.
Yeah.
Construction is almost completed at the high school. We're occupying all the current spaces right now. There's just a few punch list items that need to be knocked out, but students are in the areas, loving the areas, enjoying it, able to spread out a little more, which has been kind of nice. And they're putting the greenhouse together as we speak. Every day they're out there getting one step closer to finishing the greenhouse. So we'll hopefully have that up and usable here within the next probably month or so, I'd imagine. That's about it. So second semester started off to a great start so far, and everything seems to be good.
Cool. Anything else? It looks like we could move on to the board reports while we wait for Carrie. So the item that we had was the regional workshop that Tyler, Andrew, and myself that we attended in Ames. It was a pretty full house. There was probably at least 6, 7 districts, would you say?
Oh, yeah.
Represented, maybe more. Anybody want to?
No, I mean, it was good for me, new board member. I learned about the superintendent evaluation, which I thought was good, and I learned a lot there. Talked a lot with some of the other districts. I know Nevada was there, Ballard was there, Ames was there, Johnston, I'm trying to think who else on this, and Newton. Yeah, there were a lot of schools represented there, so
Yeah.
it was great for me.
Yeah.
I needed that. So.
It was a good opportunity, and we broke out into sessions, and like you got a chance to listen to how other school districts actually do some of these evaluations and things like that. And I left with some more information. I also left with just a feeling that we're on the right track of our processes and kind of carrying out our duties on the board. And in terms of making sure that we have timely processes in place, etc. So I thought it was good, a very good use of time, and thank you, Andrew, for suggesting that. Hopefully look out for more and more of those in the future.
It's an easy drive for us.
Easy drive. We actually commented that we were closer than the Ames
Yeah.
folks
Yeah.
to the
Is that right?
district.
Yeah,
But
very
yeah. Okay. Well, Carrie's still not back. So
Start going on
she would want to go on down. Yep. Here we go. First of all, let's just take a brief pause and notice that this says we'll start this at 6:45 and it's 6:10.
You're ahead of time.
Yeah.
Never happened, ever. So
It's a precedent we want to keep.
it is a precedent. Let's just all take a moment and just consider that.
Yeah, good work.
Okay, the first item under old business is the second reading of the reviewed or the amended board policies with possible action to approve. So if you remember these, and there's a whole list of them here, thank you for listing these out like this, Gail. These are a list of policies in the 800 section, buildings and sites, that the policy committee reviewed now 6 weeks ago or so. and compared them with IASB and recommended that there were no changes needed, that our policies were in sync with IASB. So if anybody wants to bring up any conversation about this or have any questions about any of the particular policies, we can certainly bring them up.
You guys will notice Deb put a pretty good summary together as well.
Yep, you can see it there.
Right there. There really not a lot of changes to many of these.
I think that there's 2 that were legal references, is that right?
Yep, and then the capital assets, that's in yellow there. We actually pulled that out, and that'll be a first reading tonight, so.
But we use IASB's reference manual to use as a guide. And like Deb said, basically our policies that we had, except for a couple of legal references there, were spot on.
And then, did they redo the capital one too, so that it isn't so intrusive too? That's going along with IASB as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one will be coming up for a first reading
Yeah,
later on.
we did take an opportunity to rewrite that.
That'd be a heck of a note if you had to go around count all the chairs.
Only the $5,000
Wow,
chairs.
that's tough.
Yeah, only the $5,000 chairs, and I don't know that we have. So, any comment on that? Would we like to consider a third reading, or?
Nope,
is there a
I'll
motion
move
to-
approval.
Okay.
Second reading.
All those in favor?
That's a second.
And then
Jeff, okay.
any further discussion?
Yeah, is there any further discussion that we'd like to have on that? Okay.
Wow.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It was passed with the second reading. Should we go back to, what do you want to do? Carrie, we skipped too, because we actually moved ahead a little
Oh
faster.
my
than
gosh, I'm sorry, I just took me a while to.
Do you have because we've got some people here in the audience that are interested in some of them, do you mind if we go and then can we switch back to that?
You can do whatever's easier, I don't care.
If you're here for the whole meeting, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So moving on to new business, 701 construction. So looks like the first item, Adam, is Story County construction, Story construction updates and cost budget summary. I don't know why I thought that.
The information was included, like Vic said, at the high school, in really all the spaces that people have occupied. I would say we're 98% complete in all of those areas, with the last 2% being some stuff at the kitchen at the high school.
Glass and
Yeah, some,
display case.
yep. I'll say some minor details, but details obviously that we need to work through to get done, which Brian is working on getting done, as well as the other bid package contractors. Trying to work with the field contractor to get his schedule of duration days so that we can propose a schedule, just so everybody here is aware of what that's going to look like when the frost is out of the ground and they are able to get on the surfaces to start the work. Outside of that, our trailers are gone, Van Monens are gone. There's still some miscellaneous electrical equipment there that needs to be cleaned up. The shed is yours, so you can keep it. Other than that, I think the locker numbers got done.
Yep.
So that was a big bonus that got done really without anybody knowing.
Another thing that Adam and Brian have done a nice job is to share where we're at on the punch list.
Yeah.
And that is very helpful, so that we know both, basically the punch lists are at the high school in the middle, but we know that we're really closing in on that, so
Yeah.
that's appreciated.
Yeah, I think Brian is trying to send an update to you, Lindsay, every week,
Okay,
if not twice a week, so
thank you.
just to let you know how things are going and what's remaining.
So, and there is 66,000 left in the contingency?
Plus the
Plus
item
the
above
one.
that for the track, so I think it's 130.
Got it.
Yeah, about 130, let's see, 68 and 66, so 134. Yeah,
Any thoughts or
Going
comments
good.
or questions?
trying to get everybody down on the punch list at this point. That is the goal now. Closeout documents have been uploaded for a lot of the sections. I know Brian's combing through those.
Yeah, we've reviewed roughly 30% of the closeout documents, and I think there's a number of them that are uploaded for our reviews.
Yep.
We'll start closing those out as well, so.
What's your holdback on these guys?
There's 5% retainage. That's standard. That's mostly just for liens, any waivers and liens against the project. But also, we had a meeting, Adam and Brian and I, a few weeks ago to go over punch list items that were withholding dollars from pay applications, so that they would be incentivized to finish up. I don't recall from our meeting, and they've worked through a number of the large ticket items anyway. So. But yeah, we are withholding an amount from pay applications.
So if I read this right on here today, and when I was looking at your CM construction and pre-con services, there's no holdback on you guys.
Correct.
And why is that?
It's just not set up that way. We don't generally hold any retention on CMs, and that's common across all districts, all CMs.
Okay.
That's not something that Danielle has ever written into contracts. So
Okay.
Danielle is from Allers. We experienced that across all the districts, and I don't know that they've ever held retention on us as a CM.
Okay.
And I don't have the reason or the answer to give you on why they don't do that. I can sure find out though.
No, I just want to know if it's not in your contract, it's not in your contract.
Yeah.
Probably the closest thing we have is our closeout. As part of our closeout, our requirements of our contract is that we have to do a 1-year warranty walkthrough set up next year. So we wouldn't get paid for the last, I can't remember, 1 or 2% of the design services until we've done that warranty walkthrough next year.
Okay.
And we're down to really just a couple contractors right now, isn't that right, guys? As far as and they know it, and they're trying to get things done as fast as they can. But it's not like there are 15 contractors out there that we're still trying to get this project done. It's just like I said, a couple.
Right. Correct.
Some electrical, a few other little things.
Yeah. Good. So.
Adam, there's about 450,000 between the second to the last and the last column
Yep.
of what's totally remaining, and then as we're just pointing out the retainage
Yep.
withheld.
Yep.
Expectations are is that all of that will be consumed though?
Correct.
I mean, that's all been in the bid.
Correct.
There wouldn't be any expectation any of those would change.
No,
at this point.
actually, it's a good thing you brought that up. So there are some allowances that will come out that we had included in the bid that haven't been used. So those will come out.
So there could be a little bit there that would
Correct.
slide down to contingency.
Correct. Yep. The other thing, we had instructed contractors to include the cost of, I don't remember if it was $17, I think is what your background check cost was. So $17 per background check. So if the contractor was going to send in 40 people, he needed to take 40 times 17 and include that in his bid. The district has paid for that up front, but it'll be deducted from their contract. Not a lot of dollars there, but that will also be a deduct.
Between that and the allowances, is it even 5 figures, or are you just talking thousands or tens of thousands?
So we have an allowance for fire caulking that was $20,000. That will come out, so that's 6 figures right there.
Yep.
We had a couple other ones that were $6,000 in miscellaneous packages for some demo and ceilings and stuff like that. So.
And when we're all done, I mean, that essentially would be contingency or?
Yeah.
Fold into the contingency bucket.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
It looks like there were accepted in the change requests or change directives that have come through under 110,000. So there aren't any. Oh, well, thank you. This late in the game.
And you understand on those change directives, those are basically for the district a zero amount.
Correct. So the CCDs essentially take money from one contractor and give it to the other for work that was done, I'll say, by one contractor out of scope, or if something was damaged by one guy, the other guy paid for it.
Okay. And that really accounted for at least 5 of
Almost,
them.
yeah, almost.
It was just,
Everything
one was
in here.
rejected and the others, yep. Do you have to make a motion on that? Okay, because those were all
They're all
under.
under 10,000.
Okay, and the owner, architect contractor minutes, you included those in there, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I think just one, and that was our last meeting, so.
Okay. Anything else for Adam? over Adam, Sam, everything.
I just raise up one thing. So we've been having an ongoing conversation on the use of the contingency dollars that we referred to just earlier. And it sounds like we might be adding a little bit more to that based on the non-use of some of those allowances. So just to get you up to speed on where we're at with the management of that, Art and myself and Adam met with Lindsay, Gail, and the rest of the principals and Carrie, and had a really great meeting and talked through the priorities. How much money do we have left or anticipate? Making sure that we want to all the projects that are currently ongoing are going to be covered. And then the next kind of prioritized projects would be bond projects that didn't quite make the cut, and then after that our kind of wish list or additional things. So we had a really good conversation about that, and then on the back side of that we arrived at a kind of a multi-sheet spreadsheet that captured all those projects. We're currently working on putting dollar amounts to all those projects, and then additional information on there like anticipated start date, completion date, potentially like level of urgency. Does the board need approval of that? There's a whole host of information associated with that spreadsheet, so it can act not only as a means of managing the contingency, but also it helps put some longer term projects on there for 5-10 year plan if we like, right? So we're hoping it to be used as a working document. Right now, the administrators have already started to use it. We've shared permission with this group so far. We still have a round of vetting to do before we kind of wanted to share it with the board. So we'll have that meeting relatively soon just to make sure that all the different categories are included on that. But then we'll have maybe we'll present that to the board or the building committee within the board, depending on how those conversations are going, but we feel like we've made good progress on how to capture all those projects and then prioritize those according to both need as well as dollars and time frame. So we'll share all that stuff with you relatively soon as we kind of wrap through that. But Lindsay and I were speaking before the meeting, and we made it clear that by no means do we want to spend any money on so-called wish list items or additional things until we make sure that these are taken care of. And that's going to go through the spring when the field thaws and we wrap that work up. So there's nothing pressing that we really need to go on that list. It's more long-term thinking. So if that makes sense. So.
That makes sense. Thank you for doing that.
Did we not have a list before? I think I got it from you. Right? The list when I first got on the board. Did that change?
It's probably grown, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, it might have grown, but our priorities, I think, were still in the right order if we can get through it.
Right. So there's a whole host of lists that we've consolidated into this one master list, and you guys have probably seen lists like this and this. Those are projects. A lot of those have already were included in the bond, and then we had some that didn't quite make the bond. The ones that didn't quite make the bond, those are on this new master list. So this notion of prioritization, that's one of the topics that we want to discuss with Gail, Lindsay, and the administrators is, okay, do we need to reprioritize some things? And possibly, we don't want to lose the priority assessment that we've once applied, but now that there's a larger, more exhaustive list, do those priorities shift? And that'll be part of the discussion as we continue on.
How's that process going, Vic and Lindsay? Is that going well, that process, I assume?
We've talked about it, yeah, and I think that we were probably at a stage where if we would take some time out of our administrative team meeting, we could probably hammer that out. I just want to reemphasize what you said, though. We want to make sure that we don't go out and spend any contingency until we know that the projects are completed. That's really important. I don't want to have someone thinking that they're going to get this and then, oh, whoops, we had 2 more things that we didn't get. So you said that well. I'm not saying that you didn't, but I think that we're getting, to answer your question, I think that we're very close to that.
Good. It's going well. You think it's going well too, Vic?
Yeah, we've had good dialogue. Sam's been involved in some, and Art's been involved in some, and then we've had multiple small groupings within our administrative group over kind of prioritize some things and discuss some things. And everyone's had an opportunity to throw things on a list and have it evaluated fairly. I feel like everybody's, we just got to hash out kind of the pecking order of things right now. So.
Sort of to your question, Jeff, I think my experience was when we did the original high school building, we went through that process, but then we probably took a couple of years off, and then we had to restart it with the task force. I think the idea now is that working with the construction management, working with the architect, then we can make it a living document. And we'll talk a little bit later about what does that fit within the facility committee, but keep that dialogue ongoing, so it's not like, okay, we got to restart this every time. 4 years later, it's a living document, and we decide what the priorities are.
Yeah, well, and I thought I remembered too, in some of those more detailed focus meetings that we had, the high-level priorities were set, but then we dove in and really got to some details with some of the users in the rooms, the teachers, and I think we came up with some, or they came up with some items on doing those too, so. Wasn't necessarily, some of these are just details that they really.
But we still have a large project out there not finished. That worries me. So, we don't need to go out and spend the other dollars in case we run into something else out there because it's very, very important we get those fields done.
That's exactly.
Yeah, which is why thankfully we're holding off on this for any decisions until after the final.
Yeah, there's no urgency in those things. I mean, it's at one point early on we thought, well, if we still had the contractors still mobilized, could we pull the trigger on some to save some of those costs? But that's not the case. There's nothing that's so urgent that really needs to get done. But once again, the higher priority is let's get those fields done.
Yeah.
Just wanted to give you an update on where we're at with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, looks like the next item on the agenda, we have some first readings. The policies that we talked to, Andrew mentioned one of them, capital assets, and a new revision to a committee's policy. So how do we have the first reading of the capital assets? Or, yeah, she's getting it over there.
I guess I don't have your, do you want me to bring up your minutes that show the summary? Or do you want the actual?
I think we could actually just maybe bring up that capital assets in this one. I don't think I did it. Yeah.
I didn't make a lot of changes to the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the first one, so capital assets, the policies in general, and I'll let Gail and others speak up, and Andrew when if I'm not complete. This is essentially our policy that is how we manage our assets that are over $5,000. What are our processes for tracking them, tagging them, making sure they're used appropriately and disposed of appropriately. And what we decided when we went through, so there's this policy, which is the main page. There's an R1, which is more about the steps that we'll take in capital assets management, and then an R2, which is just a systems definition. Really, the changes that we proposed were in the first revision, the actual steps. We wanted that to be reflective of what we were actually doing, our practice. They're talking a lot about this in the IASB version about tagging them. What did they call it?
Asset tag.
Asset tags, and a lot of very heavy overhead that we felt wasn't necessary. So that's why we removed them.
And again, items that we have over 5,000 is, I don't think it's very big.
Very, very minimal. And I know when I have my audit, I've been including and grouping things together, and the auditors are like, if you follow your policy, it's a single item is $5,000. So, so with that, considering that, it is a very minimal. And so we are capturing those on a spreadsheet, and I do that at the end of the year. I go through our expenses, and I put them, and then we do that, and that's required for the annual report, and it pulls into the balance sheets.
And like Deb said, it's important that we put out on this policy what it is that we're actually doing. So when Andrew and Deb and Gail and myself had a chance to talk through this, these are the things that we're walking the talk here is what we're saying. These are the things that we're doing, whereas before there were some things in there that were above and beyond what we had been doing.
Yeah, I think the original document was assuming that we had a asset company come in labeling all the assets, putting it together. And then we have, you know, it talked about a procedure about, okay, adding assets, deleting assets, all this. And we do not have that process, and we don't have, so what we do is basically we measure the $5,000 items at the end of the year by, we have to do it by account number. We measure those, and then those are placed on our balance sheets. So this policy does reflect what we currently do. You know, it doesn't mean we have to, but for now, that's what's reflected.
We did, and so most of it was striking out things that were not what we, you know, things we aren't going to do. We did add in one, which for some reason I think was age, but we even talked about there where Gail has about how we dispose of them through an auction process on government deals. We did mention that there was one line item that we added that was just an indication that we, the board or the administration, we do reserve the right to do some kind of an ad hoc.
Yeah, and that's at the very bottom. Board reserves the right.
Just if, you know, if necessary.
We had a facilities committee or something like that.
Well, this is more just making sure we have the process in place. So that.
Count sheet, where's your finance?
And they wanted to address something. So on E, you know, like loss, damage of stolen assets, you know, when it comes to an item of $5,000 or more, you know it's somewhere. So if somebody, if a question needs to be raised, where is this item? Where, you know, so item E is if somebody, this starts the conversation, bring it to somebody's attention. As soon as it's brought to somebody's attention, then an investigation needs to happen.
Yep. But this is first reading, so of course, just take a look. But you'll notice that most of the changes are in that second document.
Well, it'd just be the controls for removing them from the books would be the, you know, your catch-all. I think that'd be the main control.
And actually, when I haven't done anything, I really am cautious about taking anything off that I don't know that is not here. So I have sent it out to the departments and said, okay, here's your list. And some items are back in the 80s, you know, it's like, I don't want to take these off unless you tell me to. So we've already worked on reducing that down. Since I've been here, you know, this is my 5th year. So now I'm getting a little bit more familiar with, okay, where are we at to get some of these items off? Because we know 1970s and 80s, their items are in, our thresholds have changed. So that's a continuous working document.
Any other questions about that? I think if you do have questions, please just reach out. After you get a chance to maybe review them in more depth, we'll have a second reading of that next month. So just reach out and let us know. Tyler, I think, did you want to talk about the first reading of the committees?
Sure. So we have 2 policies that reference committees, and both reference ad hoc. And so this is the opportunity to expand those to have standing committees. The first policy is 208, and essentially the recommendation or the proposal is to include verbiage for standing committee and also to clarify that committee meetings would be for open meetings law. So not a may, but a will. But we don't specify in 208, or we're not proposing in 208 to specify which committees, so that hopefully we're in agreement, or when we're in agreement on this one, it's done. The second policy is 208-1B1, and that's the one where we would propose to put more detail. Again, this was originally designed for ad hoc committees. We're expanding it or proposing to expand it to standing committees, and then also in this one, we would, at the bottom there, actually list the standing committees that at least we would initially start out with. And in discussion, we've talked about, surprise, John, but facility committee.
We need one of those.
Yeah. That would be planning, and there's a charter that proposed just as a template later. Potentially financial review and planning committee, and this wouldn't be to do the budget, but to be a group that oversees and gets engaged. Maybe twice a year there's a review, and it can also help us with some of the assessment when it comes to bonding and everything else with finance. And then Deb and I also thought it would be good to go ahead and put the SIAC committee in there, the School Improvement Advisory Committee, since that's really a committee that we by law have had, and so why not put it in here? So in this second policy, this 208-1E1, we'd actually list the committees, and then I would propose to go ahead and have the committees have a charter, and when we get another charter, go ahead and put it in here so that if somebody wants to know what's the purpose of that committee, who's the makeup, what generally is their meeting rhythm, it's there and they could find it. So that's what, I guess Deb and I sat down a couple times on this and went ahead and just put out there, I guess what Gail has there, just a template for what a charter would look like, so that we get a group of, in this case, the superintendent, high school principal or assistant principal, potentially one more administrative team member, one or two of us board members, 2 or 3 additional ad hoc members, and then what we're proposing in this facility is that we'd have somebody from the Gilbert Education Foundation, somebody from the Athletic Boosters, and somebody from Fine Arts. I think if we could do that, we'd have a really nice representation of the district when we bring up issues relative to facilities. So this is the first reading, and certainly open to feedback, but that's a couple of conversations with Deb and a little bit of input from the rest of them.
Just a question, if we could, Carrie and I were just talking about the SIAC, because actually she's going to be presenting on that. Does that, I don't know, does that change as far as the structure? I'm not asking a very good question here, but.
I think I can help with this.
Okay.
So the only one that we are proposing for the first run through is the facilities one, because you can't, and I think when Tyler and I talked, there's no standing committee without a charter that expressly outlines the objectives and what they're, what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think Tyler said these are committees for the purposes of making recommendations, not decisions. The decisions still lie with the board. SIAC was an example. SIAC is an example of an established committee that has mandated requirements for how we, certain number of representatives per grade, blah, all of this. And that would be, of course, the core of what SIAC is. I think we had hoped and talked about possibly, when we talked about that charter and build it out, are there anything else we could maybe add to that in addition? So there's already a minimum requirements, I would say, of SIAC, but if we get a great, good group of people from across the district, that might be cool to add. Does that somewhat kind of like?
So, so it doesn't preclude what we already have in place.
Yeah.
In fact, it
Adds
would be
to it, I
nice.
think,
If it's in there, and Gail, correct us if it's wrong, if there's another policy that has SIAC specifically, I don't think we found it if there is.
I'll double check.
But this would be the place to put that, and then if there's more that we want out of SIAC, some additional objectives, we can put that in.
Yeah, that was my only question on that, because we have 2 dates planned for this year.
Oh yeah, and this is
So,
not even.
and that's why I thought, I didn't know, I know, but I just meant, I didn't know as we were moving forward, if you're thinking, okay, this is what we'd like to see from that. It's a framework that we could, think about how we could start moving forward with that.
I think
And maybe we could pull in some of the strategic issues into that, and so maybe we meet 2 times to, do the things that are required by law, and then we have, 2 meetings that are just, hey, let's engage the community on, hey, this is what portrait the graduate looks like. If I know it's hard to get people to go to those, but maybe if we had a little bit more open schedule, we could get a little more interest in that versus having to hit the stuff that we have to hit legally.
That makes sense.
I was really excited talking about this. I mean, when Tyler and I were talking about this, I do think it's a good idea to start maybe branching out and getting some more involvement from the community. But my only thing that I expressed, and I think Tyler agreed, was just we need to be clear that we're asking for recommendations and input, but that it's the board's decision to still, we don't get to offset that responsibility on somebody else.
And that's where those charter documents are nice, because you can really be specific as to what what the roles and responsibilities are, and so I think that prevents a lot of miscommunication, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the charter could allow, I think, specific objective of the committee in both 208, 208-1E1. I mean, they have this role of committee member, and as Deb said, it says it's there to make a recommendation, so.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
It's in there. But, so this would actually be, what I think is before the board is a review of this whole policy, 208 plus the 1E1 with that proposed charter. I mean, I think you mentioned it was a template, but I think that was a proposed charter for the facilities.
We actually, when Tyler and I were working on this, as
maybe
for
that's
the
changed.
board meeting, and we thought of the same thing, is I felt like the charter needed to be part of the policy, otherwise it would get
Not
lost.
linked, not linked, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just for future reference for anybody who's on this board or anybody in our seats, it's there, it goes to the document.
Perfect. Cool. So, any other questions or comments?
No, thanks for doing that. I think
Yeah.
that's great work, and I think it'll be a better process than trying to get everything up and going, like Tyler was saying. And I think it just adds a lot of nice clarity for managing some things, so that you don't have to have 5 board members present. We multiply what we can accomplish through utilizing community members. So I think it'll be great.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, looks like we can move on to the next item on the agenda, 703. Consider approved resolution for conveyance of real property to Storycom for the purpose of a communications tower lease. This has been a topic that we've gone back and forth on for quite a few months now, but essentially this is the opportunity. We had a meeting 2-3 weeks ago to call the public hearing to have the vote. So, originally, I will keep this very brief because everybody knows this, but they had come to us, and the school stance, I think at that time, or the board was interested in looking to see if other options were available. And if not, please come back. So this is an opportunity for us to approve or vote on the land lease that is attached in the agenda. That is actually changed, Tyler, I think you saw this, but that would be a $0 lease. And it puts it in the northeast corner, did I say that? Northeast corner of the middle school. Gotta get my directions right. So I believe this is where I would say, is there a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve.
And the second,
Second.
and then any further discussion on this topic?
So one question, Gail, you had it up there, but just clarification. Proposed access road would be along the north side? Is that was a discussion one time?
Yeah.
And the decision on no rent versus,
That was my idea, because what I said to them is if we're going to charge rent, the taxpayers are going to pay it anyway, and so really we're taxing ourselves and everybody else in the district. So that's why then I asked them to go for 0.
and then, I don't know, can we ask questions to the team that's here?
I think so, yeah, why not?
So the one, since you're here, right? The one thing that, as a resident of Gilbert, that I really would like, but I don't know that we're at that point, is there an opportunity to put other structures on that tower? And I know we brought it up, and the feedback was we wouldn't have the time to deal with that, but is there any way that we could have some assurance that we could have just one tower in Gilbert rather than now have this and then have a cell tower and an internet tower and whatever else? Any progress on that issue?
The Storycom board has not met since we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago. It has not come up in a meeting, only casually, as far as the co-location and allowing cell service, internet service, other third parties on the tower sites. So the board still has not had that discussion on whether or not they would approve that or would seek that. The indications personally that I have that it would be a conversation amongst the board on whether or not they permit it. And I can't I can't tell you yes or no. I just don't know whether it would be voted up or voted down. I know that.
So nothing's changed since last time?
Nothing's changed, no.
But we do have that in the lease, that we
Yeah.
at least, we're asking your group to take a look at it and discuss that, correct?
Correct. I certainly believe that if Storycom is willing to host third parties on the tower, we would certainly consider it regardless of which tower location it is. So the tower in Gilbert would be a likely candidate for that case. It would just be if, for whatever reason, the Storycom board decides we don't want to offer that lease space to anyone, we want to keep all of our towers public safety network only, then we can't offer that to you.
Question for the Raycom official. Do you have any other towers in the state of Iowa and surrounding states that share with a phone cell
Like a
service?
cell carrier, yes.
And what percent?
As far as the percent, I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like if you got 100 towers, is 20% of them share, or is it really something that doesn't happen very often?
No, co-location does happen, but keep in mind that most towers are owned, that do co-locate are private entities that are in the business of selling vertical real estate.
So you don't have anybody like ourselves?
You know,
That's
I'm
a
trying
public
to think of
entity.
somebody off the top of my head that does, that is like a Storycom.
Right.
And nothing comes to mind right now.
Yeah, that's a worry.
Nick, do you have anything that you want to add to that co-location type of question?
No, I just wanted to point out section 10, it looks like you guys found that there, where there is verbiage in there to address it, where if it does come up, you guys as landlords get a fair opportunity to approve that, obviously, first, and negotiate the price and what you see out of that. We obviously are not in the business for making money, so that's not the approach we took from the get-go. As Tom rightly pointed out, the conversation just has not formally been brought up in front of the board, and it's mainly because they're just not educated on all the pros and cons of it yet, and neither are we as part of the working group. And so that's something that we will be doing in the future, and it will be brought up on a future agenda for Storycom to discuss in a formal manner. But we are including that language in there in the event that that's the direction Storycom would like to go, and the landlord wants it as well. Then it's in there for us to open that part back up and talk about it.
Has anybody talked to the landlord? I know at one point, I know it's farther away from their home there, was it, we're going to be putting a road there, access road through for the ones, yeah, has anybody talked to any of the landlord, the home right there on the north side?
We've not.
Okay. And I know the city was here for our joint meeting and the zoning issue, I mean, there's a zoning issue there too, isn't there?
I've already filled out paperwork for it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, they said they would look favorable to buy it.
Yeah, I just didn't know how that.
The one piece about the cell that I would think I remember hearing from maybe it was Tom, when we asked this at the last meeting, the joint, or no, it was just the last meeting to call the public hearing, was that I think Storycom was saying in terms of the cell coverage, making sure that there would not be interference, and really just wanting the focus to be that that was the best signal they had available before they were to add. So I'm just adding that as, I think that was context around maybe why they weren't wanting to do it, or plus not being in the business of it. Yeah.
We're working on a $6 million radio project for the whole county, and that really is our focus. Trying to build these towers for better public safety radio coverage. We've been really trying to get this kicked off the ground and get it started, and we just haven't had the conversation, the ongoing conversation to say what next, what's after we get this part built. We can't really have the cellular co-location discussion if we don't have any towers to begin with. So we've just kind of put that discussion off to say our focus right now needs to be making sure that we can get the public safety towers built for the system that we need it to be. We certainly will factor in the possible interference with other, whether it be between cellular coverage and and the radio coverage or internet coverage, radio coverage, that would obviously play into the discussion, but we could also look favorably upon it and say if there's no interference and it works, and we can offset some tax dollars as well, whether it be from Storycom or from the Gilbert School District. That could certainly factor into their conversation too. We just don't know.
Yep. Okay.
And one last question for me. Is your plan A, is that still a viable option, the private, is that still a viable option for you?
It is. We're still in conversation with Woodland Farms owner.
And that was a 4,500?
That was it.
Correct.
4,500. Yeah. Okay. Are
Let's
we
vote.
ready to vote?
Yep.
Okay. So this is for the approval of that on the land. Is all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So that passes. That can. Now, I'm done. Deal? Or is this still a question where you might be considering the private landowner? Because you wanted to know if we would allow it.
Yeah, so at this point, we have your approval. We'll go back to our Storycom board on the 27th, present both options to them. We still have to work through the city issue. But this was a big hurdle to get through this process and to them. And so it'll be good news to report to them that you guys are approving of that and ready to move forward.
It'd be better news if you come back and tell us they're gonna let's put that other tower on there.
I'll be the first one up here, jumping up and down with you, Jeff.
I want to say, Tom, good work on this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Spent time, and all you have, Tom
A lot of
especially,
meetings.
put a lot of meetings in on this. And little comment, I said, we're all one team, and we're all taxpayer dollars and all that, but there's still the part I really can't wrap my head around that Iowa State land. I mean, again, just outside viewpoint, City of Ames, Story County, Iowa State joint venture, and all of a sudden now Iowa State and Story County can't figure out a way to put a tower on their land. Now again, we're obviously okay putting it here, want to be a good team player, but that part still doesn't rub me the right way. Again, I know I've asked enough questions on it, I don't want to get any more detail, I know there's a lot more beyond it, but just from the outside looking in, it just looks dirty.
I tell you from the inside looking in,
Yeah.
it's still baffling.
I've read all the notes. I mean, I've read the story minutes. I went through that thing, and and so again, you guys have done great work.
Good job.
I want to be a
Thank
team here and help you guys out as a district, but just from the outside, I didn't like how that worked out.
I understand that. And I want to thank the board for taking all the time to consider it tonight and vote on it. It is really a investment for critical infrastructure for your community. It's going to help make your kids safer. It's going to help make your community safer. Everybody in the county safer. It's going towards critical infrastructure and that very pertinent communication we need to have as first responders to function. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can we put a little light at the top that says if school is on or off? Okay. Looks like the next topic on the agenda is the discussion and a vote for the proposed 2020-21 school calendar.
Deb, can I add in some things here?
Yeah, sure.
Just to, I really respect Curtis and what he has said about looking at the calendar. One of the things that we looked at, those flex days, I can understand how those are perceived by an instructor. Those are good days to have. One of the things that we highly regard is the professional development days. And, whoops, where'd it go?
Oh, okay, I was going to bring up your document.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, that's fine. When we look at it, there are some things that we want to, when we had the flex days, we have probably taken away some from the professional development part of that because there's a wide variety of things that could happen there. One of the things that we're looking at, or a couple things, is as we look at the beginning of the school year, we're going to be Infinite Campus, and we want to make sure everyone's good to go. Oops, good to go with that. We want to make sure that I think there's math curriculum that's going to be implemented. The thing that we are trying to do is not to try to penalize anyone, or I hope people don't think that's the case. We want to bring that focus in that first few days back into the professional development. I understand where you're coming from, definitely, Curtis. The other part of it would be, someone wants this?
Yeah, they're in Indianapolis, so I'm sure.
Okay. The other part of it that we're looking at, and I think that we're going to share some information here a little bit about this, is the early out days. And I'm learning as I go here. I'd never heard of a mega
block day.
Thank you. And I'm learning as I go. And what that means is on the day that they get out, which will be a Wednesday at 12:30, there's less periods on the block. Is that correct? And then when you go into the next day, the Thursday, that's where you have, that's where what your concern is. Is that right, Curtis, for the mega block?
I think it's a concern, yes.
Okay.
Just, looking at it from a parent perspective too. I mean, less time with my own kids in the classroom is not as good as going to school.
Mm-hmm. So you want to pull up some of the information that we had, just so that they can see a little bit about that. I'm not disputing anything that he has really said here.
Who's the survey?
Carrie, was this the one that was sent out on Christmas?
We did survey all staff, certified, non-certified, on winter break for 2020, 2021. This year we had 2 full weeks, and we had a lot of positive feedback on that. Part of that was just because of the way the holiday fell. Some of us that are a little older enjoy the extra time, but you know, it's not about one person. So what we did is that was feedback we did ask from staff, and as you can see there, it's very 50-50. I mean, we even took it down, drilled it down even farther, looking at buildings and certified versus non-certified, and it was almost just across the board 50-50 as to how people felt about that. Then when we took another deep dive into the calendar, we found out that when we looked to see when Memorial Day was, Memorial Day next year is very late. It's like the latest it possibly can be. And with that, that brought in where it was with graduation. If we kept graduation at Memorial Day, we would be getting out before the kids before our seniors even had graduation. So to rectify that, we thought with that being 50-50, we added the 2 extra days, the Monday, Tuesday of the holiday of the Christmas week. We just said, you know what, let's go ahead and put those 2 in there. And then that way, that will help out the high school with graduation.
So instead of having those, okay.
Yeah, so that was, we did this, we saw this 50-50, but then when we took another look at the calendar, we thought, oh, no, it's better to have those 2 days in prior so that we've got them in the calendar for, before, so we would get out so that it would work for our seniors. And with that, graduation will actually be a week, or just a week before Memorial Day. And we wanted to get that information out sooner than later because people plan for that. The other thing we did is we just did a comparison from this year into next year if that calendar was in place. That's just if the calendar was in place. And we looked at it so when it says district, that means the number of hours that building has for district professional development, for professional learning. Then we have building professional learning, because we have district goals we're working on that we all know about. But buildings also have things that they're doing. They have learning goals in their buildings as well. And then we want clerical time as when teachers have time that beginning of the year when they're working in their classroom, that last day, that last checkout day, that day's in there. What is not included in this calendar or in those hours are specific conference hours, because those aren't professional learning and that isn't a clerical thing. So the actual 4 days or we have conferences twice in the, the 4 hour or the 8 hours in the fall and the 8 hours in the spring are not reflected in there. Now, the high school has 1 extra clerical hour, and they this year had extra building hours. And that's because their conferences the middle school, elementary, and intermediate, they get out at 12:30 on a Thursday for conferences. They start conferencing at 1 o'clock. The high school did not want to do that. They said, you know what, we do not need a long afternoon and evening and then another evening. So they have professional learning during that afternoon. It's like an early out day for them. And then they start conferences at the normal time in the afternoon. Does that make sense? So since that happens twice, that's why there's 6 extra hours. And you'll say, well, why do they have 1 extra clerical hour? Well, because one of their, I think it's the fall, we have 1 full PD day in the fall. It's like October 28th or something. In the morning, it's a district day, and in the afternoon, it's a building day. Well, that's their clerical time, and since it's not a 12:30 dismissal, they actually have a little bit more time than buildings when we get out at 12:30. So that's where the hour comes in. So next year, by looking at what we have in the calendar, once again, you can see the high school has more total hours, and that's because of that conference thing. You will see that they're almost split third as to how those hours work. We did not, looking at that calendar just from putting it together, for example, the flex days that Curtis talked about, I totally get where he's coming from on that. Those were added into the calendar, I think that we have done that for 2 years. And it happened due to the way the comp days fall for conferences. And so those 2 days had to be added back into the calendar, was what my understanding was. That was when the height of when we were starting building and teachers had to move. I mean, we had teachers moving classrooms, having to pack up in the May, unpack in August. And that was really, truly why we said, let's do that as flex day instead of doing that as professional learning. Along with that, the last 2 years, we have also, at the very beginning of the year, even with those flex days, we've really crunched our PD time in to allow teachers more time. I mean, I know for a fact, for example, in our elementary this last year, our teachers couldn't even get in the classroom until mid-August, so they felt like they were scrambling. So we put district PD on hold at the beginning of the year. We had a brief meeting at the beginning, but other than that, we know what teachers are feeling like. So with those 5 days, we still split those out as 2 of the 5 days. 2 of them would be work time. It's just how that work time will be staggered. But it's just, they're all pieces in the pie.
Gail, can you change to the clarification on the calendar, the email that was sent out?
Sure. Don't have that pulled up yet.
One of the things that we tried to do is,
That one?
yeah,
Okay.
we tried to go through some topics that are out there and realize that when we're looking at a calendar, we're looking at 4 different buildings, and they're like 4 different animals from the standpoint. And if you go down to the bottom one on that, why not start on Monday the 24th instead of waiting until Thursday? We've had kind of the philosophy that we have looked at our younger kids and maybe taking an easier start, maybe towards the middle or towards the end of the week. Feedback, Carrie already mentioned that on the winter break. Why there are 2 work days at the end, wanted to make sure that people understood that. And why the more early outs. There's a lot of demand that's out there for professional development, and I think that you know that as well, and probably your jobs too, that you have to make sure that you're up on that, and we wanted to try to add that in there. And then the 5 pre-service days at the beginning instead of the 3. Some of the thought process is we did survey the staff, as Carrie mentioned, for the Christmas. I would hope that if there's the message, some people said, well, why didn't you have a teacher on a committee or whatever? I would hope that if there was a concern that a building had or a teacher had, that they would bring that to their building principal, and that could be, because that's where we're kind of churning this through as far as an overall process. I don't know, yeah.
Just one question. So it looks like there's 9 in-service days. Is that right? The green ones?
Full days.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right about that.
Is that is that consistent, or is that increased or decreased?
We are, that's what we have because of what a teacher contract is.
And have we had 5 in a row typically, or?
We
never
have,
had that many in
no,
a
we
row?
have not ever done that before.
Is that, I mean,
I've looked over the weekend, I looked at a lot of districts across the state at their calendars, and there is, a lot of districts do have that. I mean, you have some districts that put all their PD at the very beginning, and they don't have any early outs, and they have a few days splattered within there. Then you have other districts that have 3 or 4 days at the beginning, but they have an early out every single Wednesday.
But my question is, have we done 5 days in a row before?
No, we have never done 5 days.
Because I don't know if this is part of it, Curtis, but I just think of adult learning, I'm thinking in one place for 5 days in a row.
But that's the thing though, Tyler, it's not.
And the planning for it too.
But it's not like sit and get for 5 days. First of all, I think we know that that's probably not the best way to be a learner, but we're trying to balance. And I really am just the messenger here. I mean, this is, anyway, it doesn't matter. We're balancing work time for teachers, building, opening meetings, all that, some opening of what they want to focus on, what they want a building focus on. We're opening up our district opening. We have district, what is our focus on, where we are with Portrait of a Graduate, where are we with community engagement. So trying to get all of that, those little parts and pieces into it's almost impossible to do that well in 3 days. And so since we have these flex days, and everybody's now in their spot where they need to be, and nobody has to pack up and move, the thought process was just, oh my gosh, if we could put those 2 days at the beginning of the year, that would give us a little more room to still give teachers the amount of time that they want to. And I'm going to be, I hope you know, I come from the early elementary background, first grade. I can tell you right now, most teachers come in and have their stuff done before that first green day on that calendar. Because you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to we have meet the teacher night, I got to put all that stuff away, I've got to do all these things. So I'm not going to do a disservice and say that our teachers don't put in tons of extra time. Because I see cars in every parking lot before school starts. I see cars in every parking lot over the weekend. So I'm not trying to say, I do not want to send a message to our teachers that I do not think they put the time in. If money was no object, I would want to do it totally different. But we're working within X amount of days. What we can't do is we can't take any of the early outs out and exchange them for a full day, because we don't have that in a contract.
Can I ask? So I wish the other principals were here, but I know this has been out for a while, but Curtis, it sounds like you've got feedback from others as well, but Vic, if others were here, I'd ask them too, but Vic, how much feedback are you getting on the calendar?
Well, we reached out to staff and I gave, staff saw the calendar, was able to send me information, and I passed that on to Lindsay. One thing Carrie did mention, that she mentioned a little earlier, is that we're also implementing a new data management system, which is a huge bite. I mean, that's not something you can afford to.
And that'll be part of the first 5 days as well.
Mm-hmm. And right now, we're planning for one full day, but you never really know until you get a little closer as things get implemented. There is going to be time that extra time that may be needed to make sure teachers have grade books set up, make sure schedules all locked in, which we'll start doing in March. But you also want to train the people that are going to be using it, the most. Our staff did give input to me. I did pass it on to Lindsay and everyone else on the team. I feel like other administrators probably had the same opportunity. I can't speak for anybody else, but I would imagine they did. It is a little different at the high school because we run, I would say, is probably the most complex schedule of the other, three other buildings plus ourselves. We run a complicated schedule that every other week does cause some complications for us. the flex day discussion, the difference is, you know, the teachers would choose when they came in, and now we're kind of telling them when they're coming in. So, you know, there's 6 of one, half a dozen of another, depending on what camp you sit on. But I feel like our staff was well represented in the discussion. Lindsay, would you disagree with that?
So
No, I wouldn't
have a
agree.
couple questions. I guess I'm new to this, so I'm going to go after some questions here. Were you given any time to input to Vic over this schedule?
Mr. Beecher set the calendar out, said this was the night of the board meeting several weeks ago.
January 20th.
Yeah.
So you've had this calendar for 2 weeks. Have you reached out to your
Yes,
principals?
yeah, I've talked with Mr. Van Poel about it, I've sent.
And in your
follow-up.
difference and you agreeing with the calendar versus them is 3 days? Is the 3 early outs? Or 2 early outs? Is that?
Yes,
There's a
the additional 12 for the out days, yes.
Isn't there something we can do to work that out? I mean, it seems kind of simple.
Oh,
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I run a lot of businesses. I'm not quite sure why this is in front of us other than approved calendar. I mean, this is something you guys should work out. That's the way I think of it. Maybe I'm all wrong here, but, you know, you guys all got to live together every day. I think it's something you can go in an office and everybody can fix. I'm not sure we can fix it.
Well, and I guess I just looked at, this was the forum for public input, you know, I talked with Mr.
Okay, then I'll just tell these guys that.
Mr. Beecher.
no, and we've already, I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
we've already been talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
So, I mean, I think we're living with I mean, we're just working within the system.
Just to give you a point of reference, you can pass that on. If you look at the purple days per month,
Yep.
those would have been our early outs, and those are represented as the yellow days up there. So you can see there's 2 every month,
Okay.
versus in some months, there's only 1.
Right.
You can see in different spots. So it did increase it by, what, was it 3 days?
It increased it by 3.
Three Wednesdays.
There are 3 of them on the calendar. 2 of them are conference days, and 1 of them is the early out before Christmas. So, I mean, those aren't the Wednesdays. I just want it to work for everybody. I
Me
feel
too.
like I'm
Me
trying
too.
to, you know.
Yeah, me too.
It isn't ever going to work for everybody. I don't think.
Well, I guess I appreciate the opportunity being able to speak, and I understand the administration board makes a decision, and
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, and I live with it and
Yep.
work around it. But I
How
appreciate
messy are those block days after? in the high
Well,
school? What the difference is, when we run a regular week with no interference at all,
Down here, thanks.
Wednesday there's 4 blocks, and Thursday there's 4 blocks.
Yeah.
When we go to this schedule on 12:30, we have to run 3 blocks, and then 5 blocks the next day.
Okay.
So 5 blocks at an hour and 15 minutes is quite a bit. I would say, I can't give you a specific percentage, but if I had to guess, I would say 90 to 95% of the kids won't have 5 blocks in the day, they'll have 4 due to band, study hall, you know, other things that are in there, PE. So they won't have, you know, I would say 5 academic blocks in a row. There are some kids that will. It does make for a longer day, but I don't live the reality as much as Curtis does. He teaches in it, so. I
So you
show-
guys make these decisions on the calendar? I mean, this group over here or there, and then you present it to the teachers, and that's the process? Okay.
And I agree with what Curtis says, and what you said, Jeff. I think everyone wants to get this so that everyone can work together. And I think that Carrie made a good point, and I want to make sure that that's emphasized, that our teachers work like crazy. Whatever days that you give them, they're going to work extra. There's no doubt about that. So I hope that that message is loud and clear, that that's not something that we're trying to say that they don't do. But I think that, again, we want to work together on it as much as possible.
Yeah.
The thought process on adding the 3 extra Wednesdays was, all that we're asking of our teachers is, how do we have to give them time to dig into those things. You can't, do we want to do this where we just take a little bit of time, or do we want to have a little bit more time? That's why originally, a long time ago, we would get out at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays. Well, okay, the problem with that is you don't have a lot of time. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that. Then we did this 12:30 thing. We've done the 12:30 thing for quite a while, but we took a little break and we went to a late start on Mondays. Well, then we heard we heard a lot from parents on that. Parents didn't really like that, and I don't know if it was they were just into the groove of the 12:30.
Habits.
But it's, yes. But the other thing was that we noticed was as at a late start, so we start at 10, by 9:30, teachers are itching to get in their room. And I would be the same way. I'd be like, oh my God, I got,
Prepare.
I got to get prepared. I got kids coming in my classroom. Whereas the late, or the early dismissal, you've kind of got, okay, that part of my day is done. Now I'm a little bit more prepared. I mean, it's just, there's give and take on both sides. So that's kind of where the district was coming from on those decisions. I mean, nothing is set in stone, so.
Wednesday was picked by the district, I believe, and some of you have been here longer than I have, and that was because on Wednesdays, our middle school does not practice. So that's kind of a natural, because we've even talked about it just as we were trying to figure out something here. Well, what happens if it's, a Monday instead of a Wednesday, so that your block, what is it, Wednesday, Thursday, is that right? So that wouldn't affect it, but then we would have the situation where we get out at 12:30, we have middle school kids, well, what do? Do they go home and do they come back, or do they stay around, which it just, there's just other issues. There's issues that come into that, I guess.
Well, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you very much for coming, and we do appreciate it, and I know that's exactly what Jeff has said. We need to know this, and I think it's important that we understand the different perspectives of this, so thank you very much.
To go back to one of the original questions, like how are calendars created, I've worked in several districts. Some are done by large committees.
Yeah.
Some are done, like superintendent hands you the schedule, here it is. Nobody gets any input. Some are done by the administrative team, some are done by executive committees and things. Sometimes the board sits in and creates a calendar. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another.
Right.
There's going to be positives and negatives depending on what building you're at.
Right.
There's 4 buildings, we all run different schedules, we all have different things. There's some conflicts with this schedule with the preschool. There's conflicts, and there's always going to be conflicts in any calendar you make. But we try to do what's best for the majority of people, and
If we knocked off one of those days on the front end of that, does that completely screw up the schedule, Carrie? If we were just to take off one day and have
we can't
4 lead days, does that goof up everything?
Well, I think that what we need to do is we need to come back to the table and bring you something. I mean, I'm surely not going to say anything, everything can be on the table.
Oh, yeah.
So that, you know what I'm saying?
Stage,
No, but I think that is something that, we're throwing a lot of things around right now, just because, we want to find that.
What's your deadline for when do we have to have this solidified?
There isn't a deadline that we would have to have. What we would do is if we wanted to discuss more, and that's kind of what I'm hearing, then we would probably bring it back to the March meeting. And I think that, I want to make sure that you understand, I think that all groups want to work together on this. It's so, there isn't a hard fast, it has to be like March 15th or anything like that.
I feel like having more time to look at options.
Yeah.
That'd be good. I'd like to have all 4 principals here too, just so again, have that discussion, that way we can have input from all the schools.
Yep.
I'm okay with pushing it back another month, that if you guys need more time, so.
We will be discussing.
Good luck.
Yes.
Put a bunch of educated people in the room, go ahead, it's all yours.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
thanks.
I
know that.
I just have one question.
You're on the short straw.
I have one question here that I just wanted to toss out, and because I was doing some research, and I want to say it so then we can talk about it next time that we meet, but I did reach out because I had heard that the early outs were an issue, and that teachers, one thing that I had heard was that the teachers thought it was not good for the kids. And so I kind of polled some folks that I knew in the high school only, and they said that those 5 block days are tough. And I think to your point, Vic, not everybody has 5 back-to-back classes, but they are tough. I just want to offer this because we are going to go back and talk and think about it, that maybe we do think more deeply about this, because if those are bad, I don't understand why 3 more are bad. We have 10 bad days on the schedule then, right?
Right.
And
that's also, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
sorry.
depending on what calendar, the high school schedule could be changed also.
Yeah. So I would just hope that maybe we think about that instead of saying, well, no, we don't want 3 more of a bad thing. Maybe we should open it up and give you guys the time to say, well, what would we do with these if we could do it differently? you know.
The counter opinion that I have though is I see my kids and I'm like, man, getting out of school 3 more times is a godsend, because I don't know that if I went back to school and had to keep their schedule and all that they do, that I could do it. And so, you know, I think we tax the heck out of our kids, and so, you know, there is that sense of, gosh, there isn't anything wrong with
Yeah. I support
having another afternoon off too, but I know it screws up parent schedules and all that goes with that. But I do see a lot of benefit to routine, because I know just with the schedule that our family runs, that boy, it sure is helpful when you know it just kind of happens like clockwork, and that we really lose some folks when it's like, now what? Now when is it?
I do think we have to think about the mental health of the kids, and like that does help. Those are the answers.
But hopefully I'm gonna back what you guys come back with.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
we
would agree
just
with
don't
that.
have enough experience with it, and it's, you know, like I'm in the cheap seats here, so.
Yeah.
Appreciate your
So-
support.
And on the early outs too, the middle school, I mean, that's one of the greatest days, I think, in middle school, is when they do
Club
the
days.
club days. And oh my God, those kids love the club days. Whatever
Yeah.
club they were in, doing different things, and just kind of getting their mind free of the everyday kind of school workload. So
Yeah.
I think what they've done in middle school is great with those half days.
Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and discuss this more than next month.
And we'll bring it back, yep.
We'll bring it back. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Gary.
guys. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the
Thank you.
background too. That's very helpful. Where am I?
7.05.
Okay, 7.
Can I have a clarification?
Absolutely.
When we voted, was it 4-1 on the tower?
Yes.
Yeah, I was the one that probably got changed on that. So 705, consider approve master contract roofing project changes with Halo Architecture. So this is where, I think there's going to be some discussion about this as well, but this is where they have an amendment pending that they go ahead and start the work to do the architecture for the roofing, and we need to decide.
Yes.
A bid, I'm sorry,
Bid
to
and spec.
prepare the bids for the roof project.
The plans and specs.
This would be, each summer we have a roofing project that we do through Pepple. This would be to make sure that we have an architect that's designing the process, and that we follow that in the bid process.
Yeah. So, and which roof is it this summer?
I don't know, I think,
It's part of this building.
yeah, I want to say right over here, yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm going to speak to this because I've done some work on this today. I buy a lot of roofs because I have a lot of buildings. And usually when you get a roof, you have a builder out and they give you a bid on it, and they're going to, you know, basically you don't want any water in there, and they're going to do the best job they can. I don't see the reason that we'd want to pay an architect 17% on the bid if that's what they charged on this last deal, or an engineering bid to draw up the plans, because we already have the plans for the school. So we want the same roof up there, so that whoever does it already has plans. And we just don't need to pay the fees. And so I've talked a lot about this because this just isn't right. And so I would recommend that we don't approve this and we go a different direction on our roof. And I'm not sure what that is yet, as I'm still working on it. But this would have came to our committee anyway, and we could have brought it out of the committee, right? But, you know, that'll happen, but there's no reason to do this.
So you're, just to clarify, you're saying going direct to the roofing company, you can go out and just rely on the roofing company for their expertise?
You can't do that.
We can't do that.
What do you got?
Yeah.
What's what?
We
That's what I meant,
have
they
to
come back.
have somebody do, it's illegal for us not to go through the specs and the bidding process.
Yep.
Which we have to have plans and specs provided to meet the legal requirements. And so we have to have somebody working on the documents.
So every year, I mean, it's part of our Pebble rotation, right? Every year there's some, so in previous years, what have we done at this stage?
We use Central States has given us, they walk the roofs with us, and then they give us a recommendation about which ones look to be in the most need, and then they have helped to do some the drawing of the specs, and to do the bidding process. We need to make sure, though, that we have an architect that's in there in that process. That's what we were
That's what
trying to do
we've been
here.
missing in the past, which was
But I
brought to
thi-
our attention.
But I think what it says, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think what you're referring to is that we have a set of plans and specs, not necessarily an architect. We have the plans and the specs because we have the buildings, and so they would know what the roof that's up there, so we just have to put it back or fix it.
I'm not a legal counsel,
So
so
I want to just add one thing about this. So we don't have to decide this tonight. If Jeff is bringing up concerns and if others feel the same way, we could take some time and I think ask some more
Yeah, I'll get some
questions
more
about
information,
this.
I just couldn't get it as fast.
If that's what the board.
Well, and
you
I
know,
think
that's
an
what they asked.
example of last year's roof, what went out for specs would be good information that'd be publicly mailed that Jeff could have,
Yeah.
that, hey, here's what we got, you know.
And there's people out there that do nothing but write bids on roofs. I mean, there's just like,
Yeah, because
you're an insurance agent, you're a banker, and I'm not sure what you are, and there's people that just do that. You know what I mean?
He stops the
I know, he's
African swine flu.
But I mean, there's people that just do that, so we just gotta find out if that would solve our,
Yeah.
work in our
Whatever we
case.
do, we just need to pass it by our legal counsel.
So I don't wanna do anything on the roofs right now.
But 17% cuts, what's in there?
Well, that's what an architect would charge you.
I didn't see, do you know?
It's not
I
in there,
didn't see
it's,
that, the 17%.
but that's what they charge on everything else. So it's just a standard fee. Or you're gonna pay an engineering fee. And we don't need to do either one.
So I don't,
Unless someone tells us we have to, right?
But we
I
can
think
go
there's
back,
some
we can,
clarification that we need to get on that.
When we
Right.
talked to Danielle today, we were talking about situations, and she's like, don't do anything without review of legal counsel.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
whatever
we can
decision.
get that, and I think
So-
this.
yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
Perfect example.
so we can discuss it.
Yeah.
The key to me is that we follow legal procedure, right?
Yes.
Yep, yep,
And then
yep.
the second one is that there is somebody that takes responsibility and it's not put on Mr. Beecher or Gail.
Right, I'm okay with that, yeah.
Right.
And we do it run through our
However,
committee. Yeah.
whatever it's, whoever gets leveraged with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because roofs cost a lot of money.
yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot of money.
So Jeff, are you going to
And
be?
you could.
Yeah, if that's okay with you guys.
And you could probably pay a roofing company a lot less than you pay the architect if you have the right roofing company to do the specs.
You can have a roofing company, and this is off the subject a little bit, you could have a roofing company write the bid, or like a Firestone, they sell you the felt, you know, or Duralast sells you the roof. You could have it that they'd come in and give you a bid for their product or equivalent, and then you could have everybody bid off that. But just gotta be stamped, so if you take them, anyway, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I
We
think it
can
would be
check
good
with
to have better
Danielle,
information
too.
about what is it that we are requiring.
Right,
And then we can make those decisions.
I just know, I think we can save a lot of money, and we got a lot of roof, and we need to fix this now going forward, because if we're gonna replace roofs every year,
Yep.
let's put a good system in place so the next board or after us doesn't have to worry about it. It's just automatic, and whoever the superintendent is and the principals, they can just go.
Okay. So we have to have a, we
Hold
are
on
okay to just
to
move it?
table it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, yeah, I'll do it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, no,
Thank you,
thank you
Jeff.
guys.
Okay, let me get my glasses back on. All right, 7:06. So the next item is consider, take action on, sorry, I lost my place, to approve transportation software agreement with Traversa. This is something I saw Bruce Betts.
Yeah,
ask.
one of the things that we talked to Bruce about is the days of maybe him just doing it on a piece of paper or whatever, I think are coming by the wayside. We asked him to take a look and to talk to some of the neighboring school districts about what they use that would be basically software that would help in the scheduling of the bus routes. He has is it Transversa, is that the one there? I asked Cassie to check into, because as you heard, I think maybe Vic or someone mentioned, we are moving to a different system, which is Infinite Campus. So we want to make sure that everyone talks, and she has got the information that they can talk back and forth. The thing that I think that this will do is this will allow Bruce to be more automated. I think that this will, I believe we put in there too, that there would be a GPS that would be on the buses that would allow, so like if Andrew calls and says, why isn't that bus at my house? I thought they were supposed to be here 5 minutes
Yeah, I
ago.
like that.
We can go right on and say, you know something, they're 2 miles down the road.
Yeah, and this is under, the software itself is under $10,000, so we really didn't need to bring it, but that did not include the GPS.
Yeah.
So the GPS thing, we thought, our office was like, oh my goodness, that would be so helpful if we're gonna do it. So then that brings it over the $10,000, so that's why we thought it would, you guys needed to see that option.
Yep.
And I think that Bruce will have, we've talked about it in our office, and I think that he'll have some help, you know, if maybe setting this up, Jen might do some help there so that we get everything on the right track. But I think he's kind of jazzed about this. I think that he's looking at it and thinking that this could be a very positive thing.
Well, I'm guessing the day's coming eventually where you're going to be able to go on Gilbert School app and you can see where the buses are.
Yeah.
And this is just step one of kids,
Right.
where's my kid
That's a good
at, I
idea.
got dropped
Yeah.
off. I mean, I just think eventually we're going to need to know where those buses are at all times.
Listening to the conversations on the radio every day, you're just like, oh my goodness, I would not want to be the elementary secretary or the bus driver
But
or.
on the flip side of that,
You kind of
I
want to be
think
careful
we
about
are
what you share. Yeah.
incredibly lucky to have the bus drivers that we have.
Oh, my
Our bus
Everyone
drivers,
knows my name.
they
Every
know their
kid.
kids, they know who should, they know, so hey, I hear them radioing the secretaries, I'm missing so-and-so, or, you know,
You're
they're
right.
very willing to come back around if somebody's missed the bus, or I think that when I hear some of the things that other districts around us have gone through with buses, we are really lucky to have the people that we have.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Where is that?
These two right here.
1, 2.
Tyler? Okay, thanks. And Jeff?
Jeff.
Second.
John.
John.
Any further discussion on that? Nope. Nope.
Is
No
our,
further
is
discussion.
our IT guy gonna be part of this deal?
He sure can be. I haven't said anything to Jason.
Well, I'd like
I
to
think
have
you
him
need
on
to
board.
be- Yeah, I think you need to be to make sure that
I don't want
those
to
two
call on
systems
Bruce.
talk.
Yeah, make sure it works.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that is with the GPS system?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That
All the
is
bells and
the-
whistles.
Yeah. With GPS. Okay. Next item on the agenda, consider and approve the 2020-21 DMAC Career Advantage Concurrent Enrollment and Career Academy Educational Service Agreements.
Do we have much say in this?
Not a lot.
This is kind of a-
What's the budgetary damage? Do you got to guess
Yeah.
at it?
Well, it's increase of 7 to 10 $7 to $10, so we'll go with $10 and see what we spend this year and add a $10 per student on that.
Yeah, but the other one's a lot more. The ones where you go to get the CNAs, the career-oriented ones are like $700.
Yeah.
I think.
And so hopefully, the other thing is, you know, will we get any additional, you know, with the legislation, you know, will they increase that to help? But,
Is that being discussed right now?
Yes.
so we'll have to do the dollars on that and see, but.
We have a choice, I mean,
No.
We
we're
used
gonna
to
make a
have all
motion
the
to
time.
approve.
Second. I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait, did I do that out of order?
No.
I did perfect.
You're right. You're doing good,
Sorry
Gabby.
about that. I got a headache. Oops.
When's the SSA?
I think they're doing it right now.
Getting
They're
close
talking
on
about
that.
it.
They're done by the 14th.
Yeah, the
I got an
14th is what
email.
we hear, so.
What's the whisper number?
Well, I hear the governor's 2.5, and the other side is 2.1. So they'll meet in the
Well, they can
middle,
split
is
it.
what they said, that it's gonna
Right
be
side,
somewhere in
two,
between.
anyway, huh?
Somewhere in between, so. Are we gonna go back to Carrie's?
Yeah, as soon as, I was
Okay.
gonna do it just before we go.
I don't have that much, I really just, mine's like very short.
You're running the
have
meeting,
to
but I
wait.
just was like-
We're gonna wait until this next break, which is just before the consent agenda, is that right?
I'm behind schedule now to.
No, I know.
You had it.
I don't know what happened, it just, the calendar. So, let's see, 7:08, review, this is the financial reports. Haley, you can help us get back on track.
Okay. I put, sorry about the long report, but regarding, it was
there were some areas that I wanted to spend some more time on and to give you some more information about the background of. January was an expensive month, so I dug into it and found out it just was, the instruction was a preschool program. A preschool had a almost $28,000 purchase, which was not budgeted. So that inflated consumed that more. But they had the funds. We had a big carryover. It just wasn't budgeted. So that was the instruction piece that I found. And the other thing is just overall plant and operations, even though I think the construction of the, we just aren't being, there's inefficiencies of the utilities is increased, and I did double the budget, but still we are going over what we budgeted when I doubled it for this year going into it. So I think like for gas and utilities and those, I think it was just having the buildings open, the inefficiencies of heating it, trying to keep low air in it. So hopefully we have, that budget will be more in line next year when we have a sealed building and we're done. The other thing is we haven't had that much snow. We've had more ice control. We've had more expenses in the whatever goes into ice control, not snow removal. So buildings and grounds has just been an expensive month for January, and more to come for. I just received another bill for that. So that's what I found out about that. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the changes in the PEPL. We had some, oops. So now the 18 and 19 figures are final figures, so they're reflected in the carryovers, carry that forward. This time I only put in 2 years just so we can concentrate on the updates that I did. So the 2018-19 figures are final, and that brings that forward. And I need to do some cleaning up of, since we're doing some expenses and save from the PEPL, I need to add some account numbers in there. So we'll be cleaning up some of those things. I'm going to be the big ticket items like Infinite Campus, that's a $50,000 program. I'm going to expense that through SAVE. The bus is going to come through SAVE, saving up some of those PEPL dollars. So if we do have an athletic expense, we don't have to have a hearing and run it through the SAVE. And the other thing, the asset report, those were the assets that was sold during Christmas break. And what the construction, after the construction, we have the custodians get, and they stage it, and they send me pictures. So we'll have, as we get items, I put them on GovDeals. So the other piece that I need, I need some direction to move forward with the budget. And I don't know if my explanation on here, my narrative was very informational. I don't know if you can help me with this, with the information I gave you, but I know the board's view on this was to try to keep a steady levy. But our hands are kind of tied with doing that this year. This current budget is based on a 2.5. I went with the high one. It doesn't make that much of a difference, because the factors that is making the biggest difference is the maximum cash reserve is, and I put that calculation because the calculation is in the narrative, and it's basically 20% of our expenditures. Because our fund balance is so healthy, it actually reduces the amount we can levy. And that is 100% property taxes. So last year, we levied $831,000, or excuse me, over $1 million. And the cash reserve was $559,000 and $700,000. This year, it's just a little over, it's $831,000. It's a decrease of $428,000, and that's 100% property taxes. We don't have that this year. So that drives the levy down. So you've got the cash reserve, and the PEPAL and the voted is straight across, and we do have the 405 maximum debt service. So what it comes down to basically is the only way we can increase our levy is by putting more money into management. And that's what I struggle with, because in order to keep that levy, we would have to increase the management levy $567,000. That's a lot. How can we justify that? Now, what I have done, and Andrew, you can talk on this a little bit, I have submitted a quote, paperwork for SU equipment insurance, and that would come through a management fund. And it's for, basically you insure your equipment, you save money by putting claims in, and instead of having the expense go through your general fund, you run it through your your management fund. So you get reimbursed for your custodials. If they work on any type of equipment, then we get reimbursed for their time. And the other thing would be technology. Instead of, we'd move some, that comes out of management. So I put a quote in just to see what that dollar amount would be to cover our equipment. Other than that, there's not much else we can do to bring that levy up. So at this point, with keeping the management at the same dollar amount as last year, and that's $573,000, the levy is 93 cents less than, is it 93 cents? I did that. 1887 to 1793.
Yeah.
And I know it was the goal to keep it at level.
How does it work into our 5-year projection? Does that goof anything up there when you put it into our model?
That also shows our levy dropping. So it's reflecting the same thing.
And so it's working. The numbers are working, and I think lower taxes are good.
Yeah. We just need to, as we increase our expenditures, we're hoping to, as we are increasing our expenditures, to bring back the authority to levy more for cash reserve in the future. That's a goal that we are going to try to increase our expenditures to levy more.
But valuations are going up.
Mm-hmm.
I think a gradual reduction in levy is a good thing. Well, I think what I'm hearing is we just don't want to go way down and then slingshot right back up. Is that, so it's trying to keep it a little more stable?
Yeah, and this is, I can put, we'll see what the management fund is, all I can do right now, but to bring it level, that's just not a good way to tax people's money and have all that money sitting there. So if we could, I'll see what that SU up
Well,
is.
I just wanted to clarify, Gail, that as long as we're not going to have any financial issues, that you see this having to, go back to 1887, heck, if we can get under $18, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, 1793, it's easier to sit on this board.
Well, and that's, at this point, yeah, as our evaluations increase, it's going to be driving down anyway. And the other thing is our cash reserve, which we totally have control over, because that is 100% property tax. And we decide on that every time we approve an SBRC, that is, and the SBRC is what you approve, like on-time funding, open enrollment that wasn't on our count, things like that. That was, for a total of, in special ed deficit, that's $656,000. The others is just to, like $700,000 last year, was just because we could maximize that.
But that's got us in a strong cash position, and that's contributing
and that's all,
to this, and
right.
that's okay.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I honestly, this special ed does not look good. It's the tuitions and the kids going multiple places and us serving the kids where we need to serve. Special ed deficit is not probably going to look as good as it did last year. So
What was it last year? Can you remind me? Just ballpark.
it was a decrease of what it was. I think it was like 486, if I remember right. It's a deficit, but in the past it's been over 500.
I thought the one I looked at earlier was like 387.
Oh, 387?
Somewhere around.
Sorry, I was
That's
off
what I
100.
think. Well,
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I read it right, but,
387.
and we're always rears on that, like 18 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can
So
delete
that's-
that, so that this doesn't.
Now, let me ask you this, you know, as I'm reading this and learning, you know, our solvency rate that we have right now is 12%. We could raise that if you want our cash position to be better. And then you could tax more for that.
This is
But
capped
I don't-
out at 20 though, right?
Yeah, we can't go more than 20.
20 of what?
Yeah,
Is that
20%.
20. Yeah, oh yeah,
What's
that,
that?
20% of your
No.
expenditures, yeah, so.
20% of expenditure and not necessarily tie how that fits with the solvency.
No, no. This is just a calculation, so we don't tax taxpayers more than, it's a formula to keep us in line, so we don't tax taxpayers for anything that we want to tax for. So that's why that calculation's in there, to protect the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And we're capped because we are such, we're viable, we're you know, so moving forward, as I'm working on this document and the budget, so I will look at the management fund for the SU insurance, see how much that is, and see if we even want to do something like that. It's an opportunity now that it's an area that we could fund it, not saying that we would do it, and then
But it doesn't cover equipment, it just covers personnel.
no. It covers equipment only. It's equipment insurance. So like it's a breakdown. It's a breakdown
Equipment breakdown
insurance
coverage, but
policy.
it's for like printers and everything else and all
Yeah,
that.
technology is a big piece of that. So we would run. What would happen is we would pay for our people. We would pay for their expenses in general fund. But with this insurance policy, you turn it into insurance. You pay the premium from management, and it reduces your expenditures in general fund, which. I've
never had much luck with those. Because they have them for my restaurants and they just don't.
And I'm not saying that I'm a firm believer in it either, but it's an option that we can look at to see.
Came out about 3 years ago, I know. You working with Nolan on it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will do what I can and I'll bring back. And so SSA is anywhere between 2.5 and 2.1. They're probably going to meet in the middle, and it should be done and decided by February 14th.
It's a few days away.
So as soon as we know that, we can move forward on negotiations and things like that. So
That's good news.
okay.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, before we go on to the next, public forum, I think we're good with that. Empty class. So Carrie, we'll go back to your item. I think we have.
I just had an
board that
update.
is waning, I have to tell you, so.
I know, no, I'm just giving you a 2-sentence update.
Okay.
So we have 2 site dates on the calendar. One is February, there it is, February 27th, and the other is May 14th. At the February 27th, we're going, we have 2 bigger things on our agenda. One is our course offerings at the high school. We have some things that we are adding, and same at the middle school. And then we wanted to give our Portrait of a Graduate update. We'll be collecting some ideas for what that graphic could look like, and we want to share some of that information. So that's going to be the 27th. May will hopefully be we are going to be required to look at our district data, and so we are not going to pull up the data for last year's. I mean, it's too, not that it's too old, but it doesn't, hopefully by the May 14th date, we will have our other data back. We will have been done about a month at that point, so we should have it back. We're saying we will, and so we'll do some goal setting at that point, but, so that's where we're at.
Can like board members come just to
Yes.
watch that, like Joseph or whatever? and
Yes.
just speak? Okay.
And
Be interesting to see that. I'll go, I think.
But then my other question is, as you, how do you, I mean, if there's something that you see that, you know, you want on that agenda, or you'd like, let's work together on that.
So that's the meeting when we've got a pair from every grade, right? So there's.
Well, we've married we put our district advisory committee
Yeah.
and SIAC together.
Right.
And so we make sure, we like to have, we have documentation of trying to have equal with males and females, getting representation from different factions of our community, and we keep that documentation, but we also send it out to anybody's welcome to come.
So no longer, I know at one time there was
Like
2 from each
yeah.
grade.
We did that for the district advisory committee,
Yeah.
and since we decided to marry, this, I don't know why, it was happened quite a while ago, the committees were married just so that we could get a more, hopefully,
More engagement, so
More
that's kind of
engagement.
my question is how many, I mean, what will the recruitment look like? Because that's important stuff.
we
as far as
have,
getting
we
folks in
have,
there.
last year, we put it out to everyone, but we also had special invites that we also, just to the people that have been part of it in the past, but we also opened it up to the community, just because.
Which that's great, but we actually don't have standing committee members then, you're saying? There
No, we
isn't
do
a-
have
there
standing
are
committee
two-
members, but we also invite others to come as
So
well.
there are 2 parents from 2nd grade, 2 parents from 3rd grade, 2 parents.
We don't have to do that for this committee.
But there are parents
Yes.
on a list
Oh, yes,
that are
yes,
expected to
yes.
come.
But
Yes.
is that kind of an annual thing, Carrie, that you kind of set that up, or is that typically kind of how we do it, right? Is it, we'll
Yeah,
say, hey,
we-
we need to round up the people for this year's slate, hey, do you want to serve on it? And
Yep.
sometimes some people re-up.
And some people
sometimes
say,
they-
yep, I want to do it, and some people say, no, I don't want to do it.
And Carrie, do you have a requirement that you have to have certain representation?
Yes, we have to have certain male, we try to have equal numbers of males and females. We try to have representation of different, for example, special ed parents, talented and gifted parents, and that kind of thing. But we opened it up. We had not ever done that until last year because we struggled with getting people to come to them.
Yeah, and
And
that's.
that's the problem. I mean,
right.
I'm not saying that. I hear what you're saying. I think
Okay.
I understand where you're going with this. But we've also opened it up because we want to involve people.
Right.
So if you've got a better way to do it, I am all for it.
No, I know it's tough. I know it's a tough deal. I mean, there's no question about it.
Just aren't wrong, they'll all be there.
I really don't.
There's something wrong.
I want
No.
to say there was probably 20, 25, 30 people there last year.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
That last year wasn't bad. I
That's
mean,
not
We were around a great big horseshoe and it filled
Yeah.
up the
Yep.
library and
Yeah.
it was pretty good.
So Deb, do you need a board member to sit and help with the SIAC charter then for the standing committee or?
Yeah, I think that we were gonna work with.
Do that later,
Kira.
get this
Yeah.
done.
So
Okay.
first, we were talking about with that one, just starting with the finance, and let's get our
Okay,
feet
get
wet,
that one
and then
done,
we'll
and
do
then
like
we'll
a
work on
fast
the next
follower
one.
with the next, yeah.
All right, that sounds,
But yes, we would need a,
okay.
I think we would need a, okay. Thank you for that, Karen.
you're welcome.
Okay, whoops, hold on, let me get back to my agenda. All right, so it looks like we move on to the consent agenda. This is normally where we would ask if anybody wants to pull anything out. There's actually, it sounds crazy for me to say this, but I believe you'd want to pull out what, right?
Yeah, if I can.
I
Yeah.
don't think I can.
I would like to pull out 808.05B, the early and retirement application. You have that in your information. I did get a chance to talk to Mary today, and she just wanted me to make you aware of the fact that what had happened was Mary was here, then she was gone to United, and then came back here. She just said that she wanted the board to realize that she couldn't get out of her contract as soon as she had hoped to at United. The real crux of this is 2 things. Number 1, the consecutive years, and number 2, when her employment would start, and that would have been August, do you
Usually
have,
August 15th.
of that year.
So if by our policy she's not eligible, when would she be eligible? At 15 years?
Yeah,
Non-consecutive.
is it 15 that she would be?
Consecutive, 15 consecutive years.
Consecutive years.
For early retirement.
For
So
early
she's,
retirement.
how many does she have now?
She has 6 and 7.
Right.
So
So
she
she had
would,
6 consecutive, and then she took a year off, and then she had 7 consecutive.
so she had to go.
So she would have to go 15, so she would have
8.
another 8 to go.
For early retirement.
For early retirement.
early retirement.
Early retirement,
Yeah.
that's all. She could retire, But to meet this,
Would we have other people that would hit on that exception? If we made an exception, there would be more ramifications than just this one.
You would have to change your policy.
Okay, is how it would go then.
Yeah. This is, yeah. I think that's.
So what do you want to do?
At this point, is this, so the consent agenda was just that this application came through, and I believe it was,
Yeah.
was the action that it was denied, or was that?
The recommendation would be it's denied because it goes against our policy.
And this is the policy that is enforced today.
Okay.
So that is why it was on the consent agenda. I think it's just worthy that we bring that up. It's
Okay.
obviously very important, and it's, I mean, we wish it could be different.
That's exactly right.
But you did have an opportunity to walk Mary through that today.
Yep.
Yep, okay. So all that set, do we have a
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second?
A second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Looks like we have, on the next calendar, we have March 9th is our regular board meeting. And then the following month, April 13th, for the budget hearing as well. So, are there any other items that need to be added to the agenda, or to the calendar? I think we'll probably be having an evaluation up in April. But
what does everybody's agenda look like for March?
Agenda?
You're not here.
Oh,
No, not
How's that?
for the March meeting. So technically, okay.
I should too. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
I know it's time to go.
Yeah. So we do have an executive session for the negotiation strategy really quick. Is that, do you want this?
Not too long, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
She's throwing that out there.
I've only messed this up.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing that big
I don't know how
thing?
to do it.
Yeah, I think we just have to hit this button up here in the corner. This one right here.
Oh, okay. So I'll call him and ask.
Yeah, ask him what